Well, I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose and then out through your mouth as though you're blowing through a straw. Doing this a couple of times. Maybe more for me right now. Right now, we are actually conductors to a switch in our mind that is activating and balancing our hormones and also calibrating our nervous system. Really important if you're in menopause, just saying. To get something real clear and straight, tiny but tough, yes, okay. I am a dietitian, but I was born human first. And it means that we have a lot in common. And you might be thinking, what does this 4'10" and a half dietitian, postmenopausal, have in common with you? I'll paint out the obvious. Well, we all need to breathe and we all need to eat. And it turns out when you hang a plaque on the wall and call yourself a dietitian, you aren't exempted from cravings or emotions or emotional eating. In fact, you are all emotional eaters. Courtesy of our subconscious mind, we are breathing 24/7 without having to think about it. But with our conscious mind, we can change how we breathe, as we just did. And how we breathe matters, especially when eating. You see, the subconscious mind is trained to see and trained to understand how you're breathing, and it makes these quick adjustments accordingly. So if you're in shallow breathing, it'll switch to, albeit small or otherwise, the fight-flight response, known as the sympathetic system. But in calm breathing, as we just did, it switches over to the parasympathetic system, the rest, digest, create response. You could kind of think of it as an AM/FM dial on your radio, where it switches back and forth according to the frequency of your breathing. For centuries, we've defaulted to the fight-flight response, or AM, if you will. And we can be thankful for that. It allowed me to be here today. It allows us to eat, but it also allowed us to eat back then and not be eaten. So I'm grateful for that, except it comes with a surge of hormones like cortisol. And cortisol, just doing its job, for instance, and other hormones too, are pumping the heart faster, tightening the muscles, slowing down digestion, all in preparation for the fight or the flee. Today, we have multiple episodes of the fight-flight response through our breathing, mainly, and anxiety and so forth. But what happens is this build-up, along with the stresses, isn't being released in the fight and flight like it used to. You know, we're still sitting. So it's building up along with the stresses, and it's correlated to higher levels of cardiovascular disease and even digestive disorders like bloating. But fortunately, we have the other system, the rest, digest, create system. And I'm emphasizing the word digest here because a cocktail of hormones like serotonin are being made, which are superior for digestion, absorbing your nutrients, and helps you feel fuller faster, helps you feel more fulfilled. You could kind of say it's like a recipe for weight reduction and lowering things like heartburn. So to me, a lot of focus on the how. Now, it turns out also that animals have emotional eating behaviors. You're going to find out I do like cats, so here we are with cats. This is based on a study that was done with cats who were eating, and under X-ray we could see normal functioning digestive system, heart pounding, but in a normal way, until a dog came into the room. And it was in this stress response that many of them, you could see their hearts were fluttering, of course, and their digestive system constricting and contracting, and some of them were vomiting. So it begs the question, what about you and I? What about when we're watching the news, somebody's in distress, we're eating, driving in traffic, eating in frustration if you drive in traffic like I do? What about skating across the floor, wiping counters, and putting your plate in the dishwasher while eating? Are you in the fight-flight response, or are you in the rest digest? AM or FM, you cannot be on both at the same time. And since cardiovascular disease is one of the #1 causes of death in North America, it is worth the exploration on all angles. And as a dietitian for the last almost 4 decades, exploring what not to eat is something we have done. But I don't think we have looked at the how as much. I'll say also what we're not eating, but I want to focus on the how. So the definition of an emotional eater, at least the stereotypical one, is somebody who's eating under some sort of stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom. Sometimes a mindless binge is involved. But I honestly want to highlight that it's the fight-flight response that's engaged likely. Therefore, the thinking is under a survival mode. Good luck stopping it in that mode. And just as there are so many emotions that the emotional eater will experience, they also gravitate to different foods. Cookies and ice cream and sadness, and pizza and wings with celebration. Is it sounding familiar? We're all emotional eaters. And just like there are varieties of foods that they choose, it's also going to be a variety of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Meaning it may not be just about the food choice. It might be the how, the fast-paced binge, the discomfort, the portion distortion, the guilt. And certainly guilt diets are not helping. So I've started my studies, we'll just say I'm 40 years in wellness, alternative medicine and non-alternative, witnessing like any and all types of diets. I'm sure you've been there too, cabbage soup, bacon, you name it. And I started my studies in the 80s when carbohydrates were the best. And then came the 90s and fat started to take their turn. It started off with cold pressed oils, omega-3s, people were drinking olive oil, I remember that. And then about halfway through, fat's bad. The low-fat diet product era launches, litters our grocery stores, and they've never looked the same since. And then came, where's the beef? And then protein took their turn. I've been watching this battle of the macronutrients, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, duking it out for the spotlight. And meanwhile, the industry now is trending towards plant-based eating. Carbohydrates making a comeback. Only I'm not so happy about this battle because, well, I want to ask this. Are we about to cycle through it again? Another 2 to 3 decades? Have you noticed that diabetes, heart disease, mental disorders are still on the rise? So are we fixing it with these guilt diets? Did you know that the true meaning of the word diet comes from the Greek word dieta? It means a way of life. These diets do not feel like a way of life, as far as I'm concerned. Plus, the battle of these macronutrients have us taking out these wonderful micronutrients. Inside macronutrients are micronutrients, vitamins, fiber, antioxidants, the very fighters of our disease. When you take out a group, you're taking out like a group of macros, like carbohydrates, you are taking out micros. So what if small hinges could move big doors? My family called it grace. You can call it gratitude. But it might have been one of the organic ways that we turned off the fight-flight response before eating. To FM, if you will. And what if we focused more on the how? So I have an acronym that I like to use. It's the Power of the Pause prescription. I use P to stand for pause before you eat. Breathe before you eat, in other words. Switching over with that master switch. A, to be aware of your emotions and understand them. Under the parasympathetic system, you'll be able to process that better. And then U, for unitask. Just focus on eating. The multitasking that we're doing in front of screens, how are we breathing? Are we malnourishing our own nutrition based on how we're breathing, like the cats? S, slow down. You'll be able to hear the signals of when to stop when you're full. And E, enjoy with gratitude. I mean, our ancestors paved and plowed a path for us to have whole foods, inclusive of macronutrients and micronutrients. I think they can share a plate. I call it a flexitarian way of eating. And it begs the question, are we not all emotional eaters? If I'm eating while I'm feeling gratitude, is this not also an emotion? We are always thinking, we're always breathing, we're always having an emotion. And I think we have an opportunity. Our ancestors could not pass down the thinking of abundance. They didn't have it. They came from lack and scarcity, and that's what our diets have been made up of. So what if we were able to make a pivot and make the default system the parasympathetic with the power of the pause, or breathing, call it that, before eating? It'll help mitigate diseases. And as a dietitian and human, I'm at peace knowing that you are absorbing your nutrients more and helping fight disease. It'll also help you tune into this inner physician that we have, and you have to trust me that it knows what you need. Calories, macronutrients, micronutrients. It takes some time, but it will default over. The subconscious mind is ready to make new habits. We just have to be conscious and aware to keep on working with it. And more than anything, it'll help you know what you're truly hungry for and what you're truly craving. And it'll help you stop when you're full. Wobbly or not, some more than others. Pointed to somebody over here. So what if the true meaning of the word diet is what makes the comeback? What if the rest digest becomes our new default? So I recommend for your next meal that you take a Power of the Pause prescription and experience the greater side of emotional eating. Thank you.